I'm looking at the stream right now.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we're
Bear with us,
getting
folks. Bear with us. Hey. Oh, I need a camera. Where's the camera? The camera. The camera. It's the simplest thing in the world. Why doesn't the camera work? No signal. Well, obviously there'd be no signal.
That's not the one, I think. That's a different one.
No. Okay. This is going great, folks. This is going great. Bear with us. No, it's live game that you want. Oh no, yeah, live.
Okay,
yeah, the
guys,
camera doesn't work. Do you want to just unplug it and replug it in? Bear with us, folks. You know.
Ooh, it's saying no signal now on Twitch.
I'll put the microphone on so you guys can hear us so that, yeah, it's apologies, we're having technical problems because technical problems are just the way things work. Have we got a webcam yet? We have a webcam. Does it work? It doesn't work. Ah, we have a webcam!
Oh,
yes!
Yeah. Oh, thank God.
Right, so. Dimitri.
Can you guys hear us? Okay, can you let us know in the chat?
Can you see? Can you hear? And also, Mike, if you want to give us a testing 1, 2, can you hear Mike as well?
Okay, now they can hear us.
Can hear now. And can you hear Mike as well, folks?
Can you hear Mike?
Excellent. So I'm taking all these yeses as raging positivity. Sam Yeager can't hear anything. That's really odd because you ain't quiet to us. Test it. Oh, hang on. I know why. It's because desktop audio is low. What I need to do is come over to here, use the volume mixer, and let's just see where Skype is. Skype is on full. Trainsim's on low. So if I pump Trainsim down a bit more, pull that up there. Right. Oh, say something again, Mike.
How's that sounding now?
Okay, that's now much closer. And I guess we'll find out how the audio is for the game once we get going into the game. Is the audio for Mike better, folks?
Can everybody hear me now? I am a little Mike mumble, yes.
Okay.
Still quiet for Mike. I'm shouting.
Yeah, the green bar is full.
I mean, yeah. I think they're trolling. Okay, let's
do at my end.
No, it's on our side.
No?
What about now? I've just bumped up the mic.
How's this? Sounds like Mike is in the basement. Actually, in my bedroom.
Yeah, just about.
I'm still very quiet.
Okay, I'll pump
Okay,
up.
much better now. Someone said so. Let's move on.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, okay.
anything.
I've no idea what the game
silence
is
for a
going to
second,
sound like.
please.
We'll see what the game is like
Hello,
once we
Dan.
get going.
My
Right.
friend Dan is
Okay,
on.
guys, welcome everyone to the stream. We're really sorry for being late, 20 minutes late, but that happens. I mean, it's the first time we're getting someone hooked up with us on a stream via Skype, so we'll try to find better solutions next time, but that's how it is right now, so I'm sorry for the delay. And the good thing about it is that we'll actually be just in time for the actual Golden Spike event at 1947 UK time, so we'll be fine. Yeah, so welcome to the stream. We're extremely delighted to have our guest today. First time, I think first time in my time at least, we have someone on our stream with us actually via Skype. It's none other than Smokebox, Mike Rennie. So he's a developer of multiple very successful steam trains, and they recently released a brilliant route called Promontory Summit, which focuses on the events around the time period of 1969, when the both sides of Transcontinental railroad in the UK were connected, in the USA were connected. So the route is brilliant. It came out just a couple of months ago, so we're extremely happy to have Mike here. We will be playing one of the scenarios on the Promontory Summit Route, and one scenario, and so we'll be driving. Matt will be driving 119 Union Pacific, which is brilliant because I was struggling with this one. But
I think driving is probably going to be an optimistic term for it, based on my little test earlier on. But we'll see how we get on. And if I break it, it's Dimitri's fault.
Yeah, of course.
It's Martin. I blame Martin. That's what I'll do, isn't it? Yes, it's Martin's fault.
We have a bunch of questions for Mike. They're related to generally about him and about the DLCs that he made, steam trains that he made, and about his motivation. So we're very happy. I think this will cover the whole stream. So without further ado, let's begin. I suppose we'll move on. First of all, we'll start the scenario, and while Matt is doing all the great stuff with setting everything up, before we move off, I would like to ask Mike, how are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing fine, actually. The pollen count's gone down, so my nose is not as blocked as it was before. I hope you can tell.
I'm sure many people can understand you.
Well, I'm in. For people who don't know, I'm in Scotland, not in the USA. It's typical Scottish weather. It's raining, very cloudy, quite cold.
Very cloudy. Yeah.
Typical May weather.
I've lived in Scotland for 7 years, so I think one of the ways to describe it is grey all the time.
We have 2 seasons. We have is it winter and June?
Yeah.
I used to live up in the Shetland Islands, so I know exactly what you mean. For some reason I'm not getting any sound from the game. It's being quite stubborn.
Yeah, when I lived in Scotland, I think there's 2 seasons. There's one that lasts 365 days, which is called grey, and the second season lasts 1 day, and that's when it's 15 degrees of heat. So that's pretty much all I've seen. Anyway, so Mike, tell us about yourself a little bit, please.
Let's see. I'll give you my age. Why not? I'm 56, which I think is that a typical age for a developer? I've no idea.
Developers are all ages.
Yeah. You can tell from my accent that I'm English. Actually, it's a bit complicated because I was born in Wales, and I suppose my formative years were in England, in the Wirral, which is on the west coast of England. It's near to Liverpool. But I also I was still going to school when we moved to Scotland, and I've got Scottish heritage. Then I moved back to England, and then I spent 22 years living in Spain, of all places. But I came back here 4 years ago, and now I'm up in Scotland, not far from where Dovetail had their offices.
Okay, Stirling,
like that, wasn't it, in Stirling?
That's interesting.
Other things I can tell you about me, I did actually study electrical engineering, but I never got around to doing any after I finished uni, because Clive Sinclair, I don't know how many people remember Mr. Sinclair, but he brought out this little personal computer called the ZX80. It had a whopping 1 kilobyte of memory. And then I got the extension, which was the thing you plugged in the back, and it gave you another 16 kilobytes of memory.
Good
With
times.
that, I started making games, which I never got to selling, but I was doing 3D games on a ZX80, and then got the Spectrum. But anyway, I was bitten by the programming bug, which is why I never got around to doing any electrical engineering, although it's been useful for a few things. So I went straight into doing software, and until a few years ago, it was mostly doing software for aircraft and satellites, and doing, because it was for combat aircraft and satellites, which also have mission critical software in them. It all had to be done to very strict standards, and it's not really cutting edge though, because they use technology that's quite old. But that gave me a good training in doing complicated things in software and making it work first time. So hopefully that shows in the things that I've been doing for Train Sim. And then Train Simulator, I'd been playing Train Simulator, in fact, since the MSTS days, 2001 I think it was. And it's always been my favourite game. And around 2012, I think, I decided to have a go at making things myself, just as a hobby. So all of this started out just as something to pass the time, and it sort of snowballed from there. And eventually, in a moment of madness, I quit my job in this space company in Madrid, and decided to go full time making steam engines. And that's where I am now, at home making steam engines.
So this is your pretty much full-time job right now.
It is, yeah. It's a full-time job.
And do you spend a lot of hours every day doing this?
Well, it depends. I mean, when I'm in the midst of a project, like for example not the FEF, because I was still making that around about the time when I came back to England. So I had to fit that in with other things. But now I do actually work 7 days a week. Partly because I need to, but largely because I just enjoy doing it. And it varies because I fit it in with daily life, but I can spend many hours a day fine-tuning things and making models. Yeah. So yeah, it's a great. 7 days a week job.
Yeah, it's the best. They say the best way to love something is to make it your hobby, right? So your job, your hobby. So.
Well, I was also told by somebody in Spain when I was setting up a company there with some other people, and we were given advice by people with far more experience in setting up companies, and one of them said to us that the only way to be successful is to enjoy what you're doing.
Totally.
Which was why I eventually left that job. So yeah, I think you can tell that I like doing these.
Yeah. So what made you fall in love with trains in the first place?
Oh, I think that's in my genes, because like a lot of people, my father, he loved trains as well, and we had a model railway in various places. It ended up being in the loft in the roof of the house, and I'd spend many hours up there helping to build the layout, building scenery, and painting the people on the platform, that kind of thing, painting the signals, making the houses, weathering the engines. And I always wanted eventually to build a layout of my own, but it's the typical thing, it's finding the space to do it, and I never had the space. So the next best thing, I suppose, was to build something on the computer, and that's when I got MSTS. But yeah, it's always been something that I've loved. Aircraft as well. I was a big flight sim fan.
So outside of modeling and games, trains, obviously developing for Train Simulator, is there anything else that you, any other ways that you are enjoying trains?
It's a difficult question, that. I don't travel on trains very often because I prefer to drive my car and be in control and go where I want. Problem with the train is it doesn't take you to your front door.
That's true.
It would be nice if it did, but no, I try to very rarely do I get the chance, but when I do, I try and go along to places that run steam engines and just soak up the atmosphere. There is a place near to Edinburgh, just about an hour's drive from here, in Bowness, and they have quite a good collection of rolling stock and locos. There's a very old steam engine called Maud, and I went. The line isn't very long, so it only takes about 20 minutes or so to get from one end to the other, and then it comes back. But it's lovely just to be behind the steam engine, hearing the sounds and getting all the soot in your eyes. You
can't beat it when you get that smell of the steam. You stick your head out the window, and assuming you don't get your head knocked off by a branch, you get the breathe in that full lung of fresh steam.
It's the smell around the yard as well. You get the smell of the oil and grease and the steam and the smoke. But I don't get the opportunity very often to do that. Pity.
I've set the game audio to the maximum at the moment, James baby. I don't know why it's only coming out quietly, but it is at the maximum I can get it to for the minute. I don't know why that is, but we're here to listen to Mike anyway.
So. To Sam Diego, who's asking, is that the overflow water on the right? That's actually the water coming from the tricoque. And yes, there are a lot of cocks in the engine. You don't need to keep that on. That's just to verify that the feed water pump, which is driven off the crosshead.
Oh, that's this thing here.
That's the piston going into the cylinder. It's just to verify that it is actually pumping water into the boiler. So once you've seen that you've basically set the handles correctly and it's doing it, you can turn that off.
We're just about managing a balance now on this thing, and clearly I've got the water going in now, which I hadn't got done for a while. So, but we're getting there.
How are you feeling, Matt?
Yeah, we're moving. I'm managing to maintain the boiler pressure just about, as long as I'm really careful. You've got to pay so much attention when you're driving this, and I guess that's a characteristic of these older engines, is that there's nothing there to help you. You've got to just watch what you're doing and keep an eye on everything. Yep.
In fact, the real challenge is to do this without the F5 HUD on.
Yeah, well, I'm not up to that yet. Just to put the digital. This is the first time I've driven this loco, folks. So
you're doing wonderfully.
I'm a total noob at this. I got a little bit of advice from Mike before the stream started, and we're going. We're off the 2% grade. We're on to the 1 point something now. So
you're past the hardest part. There is actually just beyond the big trestle. You've still got a long way to go to get there. There's another short 2.2% grade. And it can catch you out if you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
So
sort of speed
make sure you've got the reverser far enough forward.
Yeah.
As you come off the bridge.
Mike, can I ask you? Well, let's move on to the next question. So I was wondering, how long have you played Train Sim there? But you have already sort of answered this. So can I ask you, how do you actually play Train Sim World?
I've played it a little bit, but I don't really actually play either of the games a lot, because I spend most of the time making things.
Yeah.
And if I play the game, it's really just to test scenarios that I've written myself, or occasionally I download a workshop scenario and try it out. But I don't spend a lot of time. I don't have a lot of time to play.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. Would you, I think, eventually, if we get, for example, 119 into Train Sim World, would you be keen to play this, or perhaps even create
I would love to do that.
I think I'd be wanting to talk to Mike to make 119 possible in Train Sim World, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Exactly.
No one knows this loco, or at least this genre of loco better than Mike's experience.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
I mean, I've seen the kind of thing you can do in Train Sim World, and to be able to translate this into a graphics engine that can really handle the steam effects and smoke and so on, and of course the scenery, that would be wonderful. And to get proper like the glint off the brass, because there's a lot of brass on this engine, and train simulator, wonderful as it is, of course it's not up to the level of Train Sim World when it comes to
No, clearly.
recreating the effects of light, glinting off metal and so on.
Yeah, and guys, this is not a hint for those in the chat. We were just talking.
We're chatting.
But who knows?
We're chatting.
Yeah.
I'll bear that in mind, though. I'll hold you to it.
So
You do.
do you have favorite route or logo in the real world, Mike? What's your favorite?
Well, actually, no. My favourite route in the real world, I suppose it would have been the one that I used to travel on, because when I was in Manchester, I used to travel home to Scotland up the West Coast Main Line behind Diesels. And so I still have a fondness for that, and doing the funny manoeuvre at Carstairs where the Diesel had to sort of go around a Y to be able to branch off to Edinburgh while most of the train went to Glasgow. But in the game, I think my favourite route, I don't have many routes to be honest, but the one I think I like the most is Western Lines of Scotland.
I love that.
It's probably no surprise.
It's got a lovely steam era feel to it.
It does, yeah.
There's also been some amazing
so much variety.
Yeah, there's been some amazing stuff uploaded to Steam Workshop using all sorts of different stock as well.
Yeah, and to go with that, I still actually don't have it, but I've seen the Bossman Games Black 5, and it does look fantastic. So,
it is.
One day I'll have to get that.
It is, definitely.
Maybe somebody will get it me for Christmas.
So, Mike.
I did actually mention to you, though, that if I were to get it, I think the reason I've put off buying it is that I would probably end up spending too much time playing and not enough time working.
Yeah, we know how that goes.
So, Mike, I don't know if you know a lot of other modders, but if you, for example, if some young modder that wants to do routes or locals for Train Simulator came to you and asked for advice, what is the first thing you would tell them? What would you probably advise them how to start on the first project, or perhaps maybe how to keep that pace and that focus and believe in yourself? Is there anything that you can give to those who are very early in the process, or maybe just thinking about it?
I get asked this question a lot from people who ask me to give them a hand with their own personal project or to explain things to them. When it's something that I can explain succinctly and without too much effort, then I'm happy to do that. But most of the time, what I have to explain to people who don't realise what's involved, I have to explain to them what's involved, and that it's more than just building a 3D model. I mean, a lot of people seem capable of getting that far, but then they come to the animation and they realise that you have to do things like the wheels and the axles have to be a separate piece of the model so that it can be rotated. Then you get on to things like the texturing, and you have to explain about the use of the shaders and the various effects to get a good looking model, and many other things. How to make sounds, how to set up the physics, how to set up the blueprints, how to make the controls work. So there's a lot to do. And what I always say is that if this is your first project, do something else. Because when I started, I didn't go straight into doing a steam engine. I think the very first thing I did was a 2D tree, one of these viewer-facing trees. I even wrote an article for it for the old Engine Driver blog, and I did other things like that. Houses. I made a model of the TARDIS from Doctor Who, which might even still be on a website somewhere. So I did all these little things and sort of built up knowledge of how to do more and more complicated things. And before I did a steam engine, a lot of people I think will remember this. I made an animated signal box. You could go in the signal box and you could throw the levers and see all the block instruments working.
I remember that, yeah.
The bells dinging and so on. And that taught me a lot about scripting in Lua, because I had to adapt the signal scripts to make it work. And it taught me about animating. Obviously, it taught me about modeling and getting different effects, like making the windows transparent. Not as easy as it sounds. And it was only after doing all of these things that I thought, right, and now I need the next challenge, something more difficult, and decided to do a steam engine. And my goodness.
Wasn't that the FEF?
No, that was the consolidation.
The consolidation.
I tell a lie. I did do something in between. Between doing the signal box and the steam engine, I did some wagons. Some siphon, GWR siphon wagons, the G and the H, and some variations. And that was good because I didn't have to make something move along under its own power, but I still had to set up the bogies, the trucks on the cars, and make their wheels turn, and the bogies had to turn properly on the track. They had to sit on the track and not fly off. I had to learn about the couplings. So it was going through different stages and steps, taking it one step at a time, rather than just trying to go from zero to making a steam engine. If you try and do that, I can almost guarantee you'll be so frustrated you'll give up, unless you're very, very patient. So yeah, it's learn the ropes before you try and do something really complicated.
Yep. So start small and then move on. Get experience. It's obviously a long process. You cannot just take everything and begin working on difficult projects, and you probably need years of experience. Especially, you probably need experience in coding and in writing software. If you're from a different discipline, it might be quite difficult.
It's not just coding, though. It's so many things. You have to be a fairly proficient coder in order to understand how things work with the game and how to interface with the game. You also have to be an artist, because you've got to create the textures and be able to map them realistically onto the model. So I already had a lot of experience using Photoshop, because I'd been doing things for Flight Simulator before this. You also need to be able to understand how to edit sounds and create sound effects. I use a couple of programs to do that, which make the job easier, but you still need to understand how to get the most out of them.
Yep.
The physics and the controls, you've got to understand how the engine works. I had a lot of I got a lot of advice and input from engineers, steam locomotive engineers in the USA, who told me how things worked. I mean, there was a lot I didn't know, and a lot you can't get simply from books.
Yeah.
So, if you can build up a rapport and get in touch with people like that, who will tell you, fill in the blanks when there's stuff that you don't know. That really helps. And of course, you need to be able to do the 3D modeling as well, and that takes a long time to learn.
So there's a variety of skills that you need to have in order to really produce anything in full train simulator. Yeah,
I think some people do the job as a team. So they might have one person who only does the 3D modeling and texturing. They might even have a second person doing the texturing, and then another person or group doing the sounds. But I prefer to do everything myself, because I like to learn how everything works and be in control. And being in control means that I know when it's all up to the standard that I want, and I don't have to worry about managing someone else or waiting for them or them waiting for me to finish something.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Mike. I think now that Matt is quite is getting quite well on his.
I'm getting the hang of it. I've even got the injector running at the moment, so I got that working as well.
Yeah. So
can I just say before we go any further, this is beautiful, Mike. Absolutely
Thank you,
beautiful.
Matt.
I mean, this is so. Just to be clear to everyone, you built the route, didn't you? And you built the loco and all the wagons. This is all you.
Everything you can see, I think, except for the clouds in the sky.
Yeah. So this is just absolutely stunning. So yeah, really, really nicely done. And it's such an interesting train to drive. I mean, I'm on super difficult mode because I'm a complete sadist, but it is just it's a real challenge. So if you're looking for that, if you think you're a top-notch driver in train sim, this is your next step. This really is your next step. This will give you another challenge to learn. This is really good. Just look at the detail though. Things like the paintings on the side of the tender. Just the level of detail, stunning.
Actually, those paintings there, you've got the not yet released patch, but soon to be released, I hope. Because the one that's currently released has got some paintings which I did myself, which aren't the ones that are on the real 119. I discovered recently that although these were painted on the replica, the one that's currently in Utah, they were painted by Ward Kimball, who was he worked for Walt Disney back in the 30s, 40s, and I thought he'd just made them up himself, but in fact, there are photos from the period of the real 119, and you can see the pictures. So he did reproduce the originals. So that's why I decided to put the proper ones on 119. But 116 has still got the ones that I did.
That's
which
great.
are scenes from near Truckee, where my sister lives.
So what actually, speaking of Golden Spike, since this route is and loco is based in this certain specific area, I'm really curious why, among all other time periods, why exactly this?
It was kind of accidental because when I'd finished the FEF3 and I was looking for the next project, and I was searching around to see what sets of detailed technical drawings I could get my hands on, and discovered that because the replicas of 119 and Jupiter had been done for the government in the US, it meant that the company who had drawn up all the diagrams, these drawings that they'd made were available to the public practically for free. There's no copyright on them, and you can buy them on a DVD from the bookstore at the Golden Spike National Historic Site in Promontory. You can buy them for practically nothing. So I got hold of them, and they are fantastic. They were made. The company that drew them up, it was a company in California, O'Connor Engineering. And they were done in the 1970s, but they looked at the high resolution photographs from the actual time period, and they took very, very detailed measurements from the photographs, and of course they corrected for the distortion in the photos. And they also studied some handbooks that were written around about that time to assist engineers building locos. So they put all this information together and came up with very, very accurate drawings for a replica. But they aren't the drawings that were made at the time, but they're as close as you can get. And there were over 700 of them. So that's what convinced me that this was obviously the next project I wanted to do. And once I started making them and studying photographs and studying a lot of videos of the replicas, I mean, they're just so beautiful, and you can't help but fall in love with them.
No, they are definitely.
That really got my interest in just learning as much as I could about the whole story of the Transcontinental and the history, not just the locos, the characters, the people who are involved, and having made the engines, I really needed to have a route for them to run on, and what better route than where the Golden Spike historic site is, and it's there because that was the original place where the lines met.
Yep. I completely agree with you in regards with the story. When Promontory Summit Route was initially released, I think in March, I took quite a lot of time for me to actually research and see what was this event and what happened, and it was quite interesting because I think it was only 2 years since they've brought railroad to US, and at that time they've already started those plans for Transcontinental Railroad, and just some years later it was already there. So the whole story about, and considering that it was done basically 150 years ago, 19th century, that is extremely exciting. And the more you learn about it, the more you go deeper into history, the more you learn about it, the more interested you are. So there's always something new to find, which brings me to a question: what do you feel about this anniversary at all? It's 150 years since then. Do you still regularly follow the everything that surrounds this event, or obviously you created Route just recently? It probably took quite a while. So, what personally, besides those the drawings that you mentioned, what personally connects you to this event, if there is something like this?
I've been following it for about the last 2 years. I don't know if you've seen the website that the Union Pacific set up 2 years ago. It was very clever because they have an interactive map that sort of follows the progression of the construction of the line from Omaha on the west side of the Missouri River, and just as the real route was reaching various places along the line, they would update the website to give some history and information about the latest location that they've got to. So I've been following this while building the locos and the route. But I've also been following everything else that's been going on around the 150th anniversary, including the restoration of the Big Boy. Yep. That's generated a lot of interest. I don't know if you've seen it, but today there was a photograph taken.
That is a stunning photograph.
I believe it was in Ogden.
Yeah.
And they've got the Big Boy
nose to nose,
and the FEF3 844 on the right, facing each other, pilot to pilot.
Yep.
Sort of emulating what happened up in Promontory.
And of course, the FEF by your good self is available on Steam, as is the Big Boy. So if people want to recreate their own version of this on another route, they can do.
Yes. But anyway, going back to Promontory, I also, through doing this, I've made acquaintances with people who are involved in maintaining the replicas, and other people who are sort of associated with it on the fringes. So they've kept me up to date with what's been going on, and it's certainly something that I want to continue with. So what you see at the moment isn't the end of the story. There'll be more 1800s stuff coming along.
Brilliant.
We'll find out soon.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with regards to Big Boy, I've seen Union Pacific has had quite big involvement in it, because if I'm not mistaken, they've spent $4 million restoring it. It was quite a big project, so they seem to be very, very keen.
I don't know the I haven't read how much they spent. I suspect it may have been more than 4 million. Maybe that's just on the surface, but I don't know if they're including all the man hours and so on. But they've done a fantastic job. Really, really good.
She's beautiful. Big Boy is such a beautiful
train. They'll bring
train.
Challenger back again.
I
think they still have to finish the tender. If I'm not mistaken, 4014's running with Challenger's tender.
Right.
They couldn't get her own one ready in time, but it's nearly done. So we'll see. Something else, by the way, to mention about the 150th is particularly important because at the time, I mean, it was as a venture. It was as important as landing a man on the moon. It was literally as significant as that. And of course, it was instigated by Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, because he could see that. I think there was a fear that the West could somehow separate from the East. I don't know if it's politically correct to say that, but anyway, there was a danger that like California could end up drifting away from the Union. So the Transcontinental was a way of bringing the country together, especially at the time of conflict. And it's kind of sad that it was finished, several years after Abraham Lincoln died. Yep. So he never got to see the end result. But if you consider that before the Transcontinental, it would take something like 6 months to cross from east to west, with a wagon train. I think it was months even if you went by ship around the Horn. But with the Transcontinental, they cut the journey time, I think from Chicago to San Francisco, to something like 4 days.
Yeah, that's like future technology at that point, isn't it?
It was, yeah. It was something that really contributed to the USA being what it is today.
Yeah.
So it's right that they should be giving it the importance that it deserves.
Mike, can I just before we I'm going to need to be stopping soon. Can you remind me what the whistle code is to stop?
Right. To stop, the whistle code is 1 short toot. But before you do that, if you put it into reverse, about on the F4 HUD, it would be about minus 28%. That's a good figure. And then with the throttle, open the throttle until you hear the chuffing get loud. But before it gets too loud, close it again, and just keep on doing that, and that will slow the train down.
Okay. Makes sense.
And then when you're ready to stop, do the toot, and that will bring you to a stop.
Yep, that makes sense.
Just because if you do the toot now, you might end up stopping too soon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I wasn't wanting to do it now. What I wanted to do was just make sure I knew how to do it before we got there.
Yep.
That's brilliant. I think one important thing, and not important thing, interesting thing, is not the route itself, but the way it was built as well. It took many years and a lot of effort from both companies and from a lot of people. I think there were people of different nationalities represented there during the build of the route. So it was a story of itself. The way they were moving all the resources needed for building it actually across. I think Panama Canal, if I'm not mistaken. So it was taking quite a while.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, one of the famous things about the route, all the stories of the hell on wheels moving cities that followed the end of rails. There was even a TV series about it, a lot of films. Something that I think less now, but for a time it was often overlooked just how many different groups of people were involved. For example, on the Central Pacific side, at one point they decided to experiment with bringing over Chinese workers from China, obviously. And they were such a success that they went back and got a lot more. And I think they ended up with about 10,000 Chinese workers blasting their way through the mountains of the Sierra Nevada, and very dangerous work. But it was thanks to them that they were able to, the Central Pacific actually reached Promontory Summit before the Union Pacific did. Through an extraordinary effort. They did the 10 miles laid in one day. It was just west of Promontory. You also had the Irish, the Scandinavians, people from everywhere, African Americans, freed slaves as well from the south. Mormons, Brigham Young, he and others, they had contracts, I think, with the Union Pacific to do a lot of grading work. So a lot of the grades going up to Promontory, they were built by Mormon workers.
Yeah, so the story itself behind the building itself is quite extensive as well. And would you be able to tell us a little bit more about that day of when the the final golden spike was driven into this railroad at Promontory Point?
Yeah, something that not many people know, possibly, is that the date for joining the rails at Promontory, it was intended to be the 8th of May, not the 10th of May, but there was a problem with the weather and this rickety trestle bridge near to, I think it was in the Weber Canyon, and they couldn't get the trains across, so there was a delay of 2 days to get the Union Pacific directors and Thomas Durant's train up there. But around the country, in all the cities, they were all ready for it on the 8th of May. And because they got everything ready for the celebrations, they actually sent the telegraph signal out on the 8th of May just so that they could go ahead and have their celebrations 2 days early. And then they did it again on the 10th. Something else that is not that well known is that there wasn't just one spike. The golden spike was actually the last one, but there were 4 spikes. One of them, I think one was supplied by a newspaper. Another one came from Arizona. That was the silver and gold gilded spike. There was another one, I forget from where. And then the golden spike was the last one. That was driven in with a telegraph wire attached to it, so that as they hit it with them all, actually they tapped it in because it had already been sort of hammered in most of the way by somebody who knew what he was doing. And then they got the directors who probably had never picked up a mallet in their lives, and they sort of tapped it in the last bit. But the tapping on the head of the spike sent a signal down the telegraph wire, and that was what was picked up all around the country. They actually heard it. And then the telegrapher sent the Morse code message saying done.
Excellent.
The signal that it was finished.
Yeah. Can I just, Mike, I'm a little bit puzzled here of what I do now, because it's telling me to couple to the back of the train all the time. Am I supposed to be using the Y to run round?
Oh, right, yeah. You have
to,
I
would do. Of course, I'm going to end up on back. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so you uncouple
I know what I'm doing now.
The train and you move forward and then go backwards and forwards and backwards.
Yeah, I can see what I'm doing now. I thought I was running around a loop. It's not. It's a Y, which is different.
This is a good test of using the reverser to slow down and quickly changing direction almost without stopping.
Just what Matt needs on Friday.
With a bit of practice, you can really whip around there without, almost without stopping.
Yeah, I think the driving of the Golden Spike, the event itself is considered one of the first global media events in the world, actually.
That's right, because they had everybody heard the signal at the same time, so the telegraph system worked perfectly. I mean, when you consider that the telegraph wires, as you can see there, I mean, they were laid alongside the tracks as as the tracks were being laid. So there were 1,776 miles of telegraph wire as well, and it only took one telegraph pole to fall over, and that would be the end of it. So it was pretty amazing that held together as well. And then, because everybody got the signal at the same time, it meant that all the newspapers around the country, they could all report on it virtually in real time, and they all whipped out the presses and got their broadsheets out at the same time.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So how we're doing, Matt, right now?
Just going to do the run around. I think we're almost there.
Everything's fine. So, was there anything special about the weather effects you mentioned? Thunder, is it different from other train similar routes?
Well, it's done in a similar way to what was done on, I think, on Sherman Hill. There's an extended weather scenario, which I used as a reference, but I created my own lightning textures and my own sounds as well, so they're not copied. I also tried to make it last as long as possible. I don't know if you could you hear the thunder?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
I couldn't pick it up on my end.
Definitely heard it on my side. Don't know how well, because the game is coming through quite quiet, so it wouldn't surprise me if people can't hear it. But it's definitely, it's really good. It's really good actually. I've thoroughly enjoyed that beginning.
Oh, let me just answer Mr. Capture, who's asking, is there any model to control an oil-heated steam engine? Yes, there is. The Union Pacific FEF3 844.
It's good fun to drive that. It's really different.
Which is, even I have fun with that one. I take a break from working sometime and just thrash 844 up and down Sherman Hill or anywhere else I feel like going.
You've got to really watch what you're doing. You can really get
you do, yeah. And it has different modes. You can run it in the really easy mode, simple controls, or you can run it with the specially scripted fireman, which understands how to operate an oil-fired steam engine, which isn't the same as anything else, because you've got the you've got your fuel oil regulator, the handle, the atomizer. You've got to understand how to use the dampers and a lot more besides. But it is the most authentic, even though I say so myself. It's the most authentic oil-fired engine in the game.
So speaking of development, what do you think for you personally is the most enjoyable part of development?
It's finishing it.
Well, yeah, fair.
It's because when you've finished the engine, the locomotive, practically the very last thing you want to do is write the scenarios and play with it. So it's when I've written the scenarios, the career scenarios for the package, and I've got to test them out, and I spend a lot of time testing them. I test them over and over again just to have a bit of fun.
Just to make sure everything's perfect.
Make sure everything's working properly, and to relax and take a break.
You spent so long creating it. It's good to just sit back and enjoy it, isn't it?
It is. The FEF, that took 2 years to.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time that that was a phenomenal project. I mean, so much you can tell it. It's so great, but it's just such a phenomenal investment of your time and skill.
Well, I kept finding things to add, and it could have been finished earlier, but then
I know
something else that somebody would mention to me and say, "Oh, well, on the real one it has this and that." Oh, I've got to add it then. And I think you'll find that anything that moves on the real one moves on the model. There might be something hidden away that nobody can see that doesn't move, but just about everything else does and moves as it should and behaves as it should. And the same is true of these. Well, I've been told by people in the USA who run similar engines of the period that these are as close as you can get, these 1800s locos. They're as close as you can get to being on the real thing and operating the real thing.
Yeah, I think Lead Catcher 2 in the chat wants to say thank you to you. So
thank you.
Since we talked about development and the most enjoyable part, which is the most difficult one?
The most difficult part of the development.
Yeah, the most difficult.
There's a lot that's difficult. Really, there's nothing that's easy. So,
but is there something that is least enjoyable? Let's say.
Everything's fun. I think probably the thing that can become the most tedious but it's great when it's finished and you see the result, and it feels like it was worth it. But while you're doing it, it can take its toll. I mean, it certainly at one point it was taking its toll on my hand. I felt like I was getting arthritis in my hand from doing this job. It's when you have to animate the running gear, especially when it's something complicated like Walshart's or even the Stephenson's gear on these 1800s locos. Every rotation of the wheels has to be broken down into 40 steps, and for every step you've got to individually move and place accurately dozens of parts, because the running gear is very complicated, especially when you build and animate the parts that you almost can't see unless you go underneath the engine. But I do that, and it can take days to do one rotation, but that's just for one position of the reverser. When you move the reverser and the links or the lifting links change the relative position of all of these pieces, you've got to repeat the entire animation all over again for that position of the reverser, and then I do it again for the next notch and the next, and it can take literally months just to animate the running gear. And by the end of it, because you've got to look so closely at the screen to get everything properly lined up, it was doing my eyes in, and my hand was so sore I had to stop working for a week. But it's worth it.
That's the challenge. You don't
nice
really know.
Very much so.
So, someone in the chat, so you easily confused, is asking, for a scenario that is 2 hours long, how long would that take to test properly?
Well, it takes more than 2 hours because you've got to repeat it several times, and typically, you've almost finished the scenario, and then you realise that I could do with an extra message here near the end to explain what to do next. So you insert that, and then you've got to do the whole thing again, or the timings. So normally, what I do with the Korea scenarios is that I run it myself and make a note of when I reach each step in the scenario, running reasonably proficiently, and then I add a few minutes to that just to make it feasible for other people to do it, but with it still being a challenge. But then you got to run it again and make sure you can do it more than once. So I end up running the same scenario a dozen times.
Yeah, you need to allow. I can't remember what the number was that a friend of mine said when he was making a scenario. Take the number of minutes in the scenario and multiply it by some fantastic number, because the number of times you've got to run that scenario over and over and over again. And if you're going to find a problem, you're going to find that problem in the last 10 minutes. It's never in the first 10 minutes. It's always in the last 10 minutes. And it's usually a problem that makes you think, I've got to start, I've got to fix it. It's not like that's just it'll do. It's usually the AI doesn't work, or a signal's red, or something daft like that.
Yeah, or even a typo in one of the messages.
Yeah. Ebran Twitch, I'm the one who's making a complete hash of driving it. I've overfilled the boiler. I'm waiting for it to emptied out a little bit so that I can get moving again.
Oh, you overfilled.
I was too busy enjoying the shunting and I forgot to turn the injector off.
Don't worry, I've done that.
So it's coming down. The boiler water level's
coming
down.
Than once.
What is it going to come down to release?
It actually has to come down to less than 1.
Oh, it'll get there sometime this week.
But don't worry, because you've got the safety valves going off, and that's using up water.
Yeah.
So it'll be a few minutes.
Mike, have you been to Promontory Summit yourself in person, or have you actually tried?
I've never been there.
Those
I've never been there. I would like to.
Created.
If I ever get to visit that part of the USA, that's definitely on my list of places to go to. Now, I'd also like to visit the Donner Pass because I've got family who live near to Truckee. So I've got to go there.
Definitely.
See the old Central Pacific route for myself.
Yeah, there's a lot of places I'd like to go and see in America as well.
I've just seen somebody. It's NEC Mail TC. Hello, Tom. How are you? Yeah, Tom's asking about some videos I posted on YouTube recently with another as yet unreleased 440. I can tell you about that because I post about this on my Facebook anyway, so it's not a secret. I've got another one coming out soon, I hope, called Omaha, and it's a Schenectady. That's how you say it, by the way. For those who don't know, Schenectady loco. They built the Jupiter and sisters. They also built locomotives for other railroads, including Union Pacific. So Omaha is a locomotive that looks very similar to Jupiter, but it has a different tender setup. You know, the trucks are completely different, and there are various other details that are different. The livery is different. It's got a lot of beautiful lining on it, and hopefully that one will be out soon.
Looking forward to that. What is that? Another one for this route, or is that for a different
It's another
route?
one for this route, yeah. One of its most noticeable features, and this is something I really like, it's got these stag's antlers stuck onto the headlamp,
Oh wow!
which you can take off if you don't like them.
Is
That's
it
brilliant.
realistic?
There's a few people asking whether we're
They
going
are
to see
realistic,
steam.
yeah, because there are photos of Idaho, which was the sister loco, and it's got the antlers on. It was very typical, you know, because the engineers, they had their own engines. You know, they didn't change crews. A crew was given an engine, and it was their engine. They looked after it, and that's why they were always very clean. They weren't dirty and grungy. That's a thing that was invented by the spaghetti westerns. These engines from this period, the 1860s, were immaculate, and they were very brightly coloured. The builders took great pride in lavishing attention to the lining and the filigree and all the rest of it. It was only later that they started to paint over all of that with black paint. It was usually when they went through the shops and they had their overhauls. But at the time they were clean and bright, and the engineers also added their own little details. You know, like they'd stick figurines onto the pilot beam. They'd put the antlers on the headlamp and various other things.
Yeah, that's one of the first things that I've personally noticed about these locos when I first saw them. Is that compared to most of the things that I've seen elsewhere, including steam trains, these things look absolutely outrageous, and you know all the details that they have in them. It's very surprising. I wasn't sure if all the steam locomotives of that era were actually that similar, or was it this style was specific to this particular location, wasn't it?
No, they were all very, very brightly coloured. In fact, we're looking at 119 now. 119 compared to some other locos is fairly boring. You should see some of them. I mean, they would just had brass and shiny brass and gold leaf everywhere. When you see Omaha, you'll see what I mean, because the tender on 119, okay, it's got the lining on the tank itself, but the trucks are fairly simple. The frames of the trucks on Omaha, they've got lining everywhere, and you know, they've got lining on the spokes of the wheels, and the headlamps. They were always very, very brightly decorated as well. Well, the reason was it was pride in the locomotives themselves, because they were the pinnacle of the technology of the time, and the railroads wanted to show them off. But it was also because it was felt that the customers, so, you know, paying passengers, even people ferrying freight, they'd feel more confident and safer behind an engine that was brightly coloured and decorated, because it conveyed the idea that the railroad were looking after it. It wasn't going to break down.
So the one with the antlers, is it called Idaho?
That's right, yeah. Idaho.
Okay.
We're almost there.
There are several. You can find old black and white photos of the real ones, and you can make out the lining on them as well.
Yeah, one of the things that really made me understand what the importance of trains is that before the 19th century, if you wanted to move some resource load from one place to another, you would take a very long time to do it using horses, for example. But when trains came, they completely changed the world. Really, I mean, they've really started this industrial revolution, which resulted in the world that we're living right now. So it's an extremely important event, and especially trains like those and connecting those two very important railroads in the US, which happened 150 years ago. That was one of those steps which brought us to where we are right now. So it's extremely important in the long term compared to everything that human civilization really lived through before that. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's also. I mean, there are two sides to this story as well, but the railroads as they progressed from east to west and from the west coast towards the middle of the USA, they really opened up what was previously considered the wilderness. It was the Wild West. And as the railroad progressed, all of these towns grew up around or alongside the railroad. Because remember, the railroads, they were given the incentive of being able to sell off plots of land on either side of the tracks. That's where they were making their profits from, people speculating on land. Even when they got to Promontory, one of the first things that happened was that some of the more enterprising people in the crews building the railroad, they set up shop, literally, they set up a tent and platted out land, and they were selling off plots of land because they expected Promontory to become the major connection between the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific, and that Promontory was going to become this massive city, up there in the wilderness where there was no water. I think if they thought about it more, they might have realised that it wasn't going to happen. But anyway, they were selling off these plots of land, and the same thing was happening everywhere. And it really did bring the country together, but it opened it up as well. Of course, the downside was that it pushed out the people who were already living there.
So what happened to Promontory now? I mean, obviously there's some...
Promontory changed very, very, very quickly. After the May the 10th ceremony, the very next day, they began expanding the yard. They put down more sidings. They installed the turntable, which you can see in the route. That turntable wasn't really there on the 10th. It was put there some days or weeks later, but I included it just so that you could have more opportunity for doing scenarios. So there's some artistic license in the way that the route's been laid down. They also moved. Actually, they evicted the tents that were alongside the Golden Spikes tie, because they were in the way of the Central Pacific's right of way. So they moved them out, and they had to go a little bit further east, opposite the Union Pacific's main line, and they set up a line of tents there. That became Promontory City, and it soon gained a reputation for being a place where travellers would go for a bit of refreshment after their long journey, and they get fleeced by all the gamblers and other crooks who set up there. But that didn't last long either. There was at one point, I think between May and December, they'd built a wooden station, a depot in Promontory, and there were sheds as well, and they'd set up a freight loading or transfer platform so that it was easier to transfer freight from the UP trains to the CP trains. But by December, the Central Pacific had taken over the Union Pacific lines to Ogden. and Ogden became the junction. And so Promontory Summit itself kind of just it ended up becoming a ghost town. In fact, yeah, everything vanished. And the same happened with the other places. Blue Creek, which is to the east, down at the foot of the mountains. At one point, there are something like 6,000 people in that area. Hundreds of saloons and other places. That ended up just disappearing and becoming just a few houses. Corin, which is further east, that was meant to become this huge metropolis. And it did at one point have a lot of people living there, thousands. And nowadays it's, I think there are about 1,000 people living there in what's become a farming community.
Mm-hmm.
And the tracks still go through that.
That's fascinating. Thank you very much, Mike, for telling us about this.
Yeah, it's intriguing.
Yeah, I mean,
It's also, well, I guess one of the other thing it does is it highlights to people that are watching just the depth of research that goes into understanding this. You see a route around you, it's not just slap some track downs, make it look pretty. It's understand the emotion of the place, the presence, why is everything the way it is. And I think it really helps people to sort of get their head into what's going on. And yeah, thank you for explaining that, Mike.
So,
I think
Mike, this
actually
is your...
that's a good point, Matt, because it's not just about following tracks on Google Maps. It's about recreating the atmosphere.
Yeah, the tracks are just part of the story.
When it's something that's was there 150 years ago, it's not that easy to just go into like Google Street View and see what the place looks like.
No,
This whole area has changed as well.
Even going back, like when we did Northern Transpennine recently on TSW, just even that, which isn't that long ago, certainly nothing like this. It's already, quite different then. So doing something 150 years ago, you're entirely reliant on books, photographs, stories, hearsay, and all sorts of things.
Yeah, hearsay and articles in newspapers of the time. I mean, there are articles that describe accounts from travellers who were taking the train and stopped off at Promontory, and they talk about this whole area being an arid desert with a lot of scrub, and it was all alkaline and salt. Nowadays, it's been transformed into farmland and it's been irrigated. So none of that was there 150 years ago. So you can't even go into Google and look at what the terrain looks like, because it didn't look like that then. So this is taking its cues from historical accounts.
So, thank you, Mike. I wanted to ask, this is your first route, right? Like proper
The
big
second
routes.
route. It's the second route.
Second.
The other one's
So
not so well
what-
known because it's hidden inside a locomotive DLC, the Cheyenne 1869 route.
Oh yes, yes, you're right.
Which is just it's a mini route because it's only 26 miles, but that was a similar job because it was 1869, so I had to research what Cheyenne looked like 150 years ago when it was virtually being born.
I guess that also feeds in nicely to what you said earlier on about whatever you're going to do, whatever project you're going to do, pick a small one and do that, because
Exactly.
that Cheyenne project would have probably given you immeasurably good advice and experience on how to tackle a much bigger project. And also, the fact that if you go into a route and you think, this is a 120-mile route or something, I'm going to do all these things on it, and then when you come into it, you're like, this is going to take me 15 years to finish. Whereas do the 10-mile route, learn what works well, what you're good at, what you enjoy, and then when you do the 120-mile route, you can do it, and it probably won't come up that much different, but you know where to spend the right time on. So yeah, that was a really good example, I thought, of just the that advice you gave earlier about do something small and build up.
Yes, that's right. I mean, the Cheyenne route, I made it really to have somewhere to run 119 in a realistic setting, so that it wouldn't have to run on the modern day Donner Pass that Jupiter was running on when it was first released. But it was also a way of practicing and building up a library of assets that I could use on the next route. So Promontory Summit has a lot of brand new assets, even the track is brand new, although it's based on what I did for Cheyenne. But yeah, a lot of what I did for Cheyenne helped me to do this route. So yeah, again, it's doing it in manageable steps.
So would you say if you had unlimited resource, for example, or unlimited time, what would be the next route you would go for?
I often thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to do all 1,776 miles of the Transcontinental? That would probably take a lifetime, and I'd have to bequeath it to my son so he could carry on, and his grandchildren. Yeah, it's a tricky one, that. I think there are so many places that I would love to make, but I've often wondered about making a route in the southeast of the USA. For example, the Alabama and Tennessee and Northern. That would have been a great route.
Yeah, somewhere for your
knows?
consolidation to run.
Yeah, exactly.
If people want a nice place to run the consolidation that Mike did, by the way, there's a fantastic workshop route that the name is escaping me, but it is a brilliant route. I'm sure someone in chat will be able to remind me. It's the track's all wiggly and bumpy. It's kind of a logging line. Absolutely, and the AT&N just looks stunning on that line.
I know the one you mean. I can't remember the name.
Someone quickly go and look for it. But yeah,
I did a workshop scenario on it as well.
Yes, you did. You did.
Can't remember.
Someone on chat
No, it's
figure it
not
out.
Riviera Line. Villeneuve? No, not that one.
Majestic Falls.
Majestic Falls. That's the
There
one.
you go.
Yeah.
My memory's
I didn't
not
have all the
quite
assets,
that
so I
bad.
had a lot of milk bottles everywhere, but it was still good. Still a great route.
How you doing, Matt?
I think we're on the last construction. We've just got to get back round the other side now.
I'm really proud how you just took it in your hands after a long day at work and just completely nailed it on the hardest.
Really good, yeah. You just got to go round and back it into the siding now.
I'm going to whack it into the wagons in a minute. Went the wrong way.
Actually, you've done really well not to derail it.
So, Mike, it's an interesting question. I think you know it. So, what the question is: if you had £10 million, what would you do with it?
Oh, wouldn't I love to? Yeah, I think about that often when I'm doing the lottery and win my 20p.
Hey, you've won 20p? Where's my
It was
20p?
a few months ago. I think that was the profit, because once you've taken off what the ticket costs you.
Yeah.
If I had 10 million, I would keep 1 million for myself for my retirement.
You mean second retirement?
The second retirement, the real retirement. I'd give some to family, brothers, sisters, mother, son, and then the bulk of it I would use to help the homeless in Britain, because you never know. But for the grace of.
That's it, isn't it? It's something, to think about. That's really amazing, Mike.
I did actually I saw something a while ago about a charity that was building these one-room homes for homeless people, and they were a bit like caravans, but they had everything. They were fixed, and they had everything in them that they needed. So it was the bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, everything. So to build more of those would be great.
Yep.
I'm getting there.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Well, so I don't know whether I might be. Have you run out of questions at this point?
No, I just don't want to repeat ourselves. So
There was one question I was being asked earlier, not on the stream. I get asked a lot. What's the next project?
that's the one I wanted to ask at the end.
We're saving that
go
for
for
the
it. Yeah.
Well, I told you about Omaha, so that's a sort of little project. That's the one that's coming out soon. But after that, I've finally been convinced that it's about time I made something to give 844 a bit of company.
Oh, I'm loving the sound of this.
So as soon as a friend of mine who has access to the drawings gets back from from Ogden, he's there at the moment. As soon as he sends me the drawings, I'm going to start work on a big boy.
That's fantastic.
So I'll get back to you about that in about a year.
A year? You mean more than that, surely?
2 years. Well, fortunately, there are a lot of parts that it has in common with the FEF3.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot that has nothing to do with the FEF3. So I've got a lot of work to do.
Oh,
It's good
that's
fun.
such good news.
I've been inspired by seeing it running.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Listening to it, and I thought,
It's got to be
right.
done, and
Got to do it.
who better to do it?
Yep.
Right. What I've got to do now
would
is
I be interested in creating the Milwaukee Road S3 class Northerns? Yes, I would. But I'd have to have or as complete a set of drawings as possible. That's always the problem. There are lots of engines I'd love to do, and I always nearly always come up against the problem of the non-availability of the detailed drawings, and by that I mean for individual parts, not just the erecting diagrams, but the sort of big front and side elevations where the wheels are just drawn as circles and nothing else, because they're just indications to the
wheels go here.
shops about exactly the wheels go here and the rods fit like this. But I need to have as many parts drawings as possible, and that's been the blocking point for a lot of projects.
So I wanted to ask a question, Mike. Can you tell us about the sort of the tool set you use?
Yeah, when I did the consolidation, I was looking around for something that would do, and that didn't cost a lot of money. And it seemed like 3D Crafter was the preferred choice, so that's what I got. And this is what I've been using ever since. Basically because 3D Studio Max is too expensive for me. It's okay if you're a big studio, but for an individual, it's a lot of money. So I've stuck with 3D Crafter. I've never moved to Blender simply because I've got so many parts now that I've made in 3D Crafter that I can reuse, and the knowledge of how to use it to its best advantage, how to avoid the crashes, how to avoid its bugs, and I just can't be bothered learning Blender, to be honest.
It's if you're getting what you want out of the tool you're using, but what it does, because I knew the answer to that question, because I've known you for a long time, Mike. But what I wanted to sort of try and explain to people is that there are some really great tools out there, like Blender 3D Crafter, that you can achieve beautiful results like this without having to invest in massive tools like that. That's not to say those tools don't come with their own benefits and so forth, but for people who are worried about the bar to get started is quite high, it really isn't. Because 3D Crafter, how much is that? It's not very expensive, is it?
Well, it cost me, I think, $60, so about £40. I'm not entirely certain, but I think I saw that the version I use, which is it's the Pro version 9.3, they're now up to 10 or 11. I think the 9.3 might even be free. And you need to have the Pro version because it's got all the extensions that allow you to export into the format that the blueprint editor uses. You can do sort of small experimental projects yourself with the free version, but that wouldn't allow you to put anything into the game.
Yeah.
And then apart from that, you need to learn how to use texture image editing tools, and I use a free version of Photoshop. I use a free version of Power Sound Editor for the sounds. I don't spend much money on tools, and you don't need to.
No,
So-
exactly.
So if I was a new person, for example, completely new to creating routes, how much would I have to spend in the very beginning?
Sorry, how much do you?
How much I would have to spend in the very beginning if I was just beginning creating my first logo, for example, if I was just starting work?
Well,
I'm
if you
assuming
use
that you don't really
Blender,
need anything.
you wouldn't have to spend anything at all.
Yeah.
If you use 3D Crafter, it's either nothing or I think it's even cheaper now. It might be $40. It's certainly not into three figures. So you don't need to spend the 6,000 that 3D Studio Max costs you.
And you will need a lot of man hours as well.
Yeah, and patience. You need to be patient, and you need to learn the ropes in easy steps, and not try and take on something too complicated.
So how many books do you need to read to create a route like Promontory Summit? Because obviously there's a lot of history that goes behind it.
Yeah, I did a lot of the research online, and there are fantastic historical websites that give you information, and then that puts you in touch with people who will give you first-hand information about what they've researched. Of course, Google Maps was very useful, partly because a lot of the original grade you can still see from Google Maps. Yeah, the tracks have gone.
Yeah,
the grade is still there.
It's really interesting looking at the scars that you find where railways once were, and you can sort of see, well, actually, you can still follow the line of there, even though it's been gone for a long time.
Yeah, they're often turned into cycle paths or walking paths, or you can simply see literally the scar on the ground. Yeah. As for books, yeah, I've spent quite a lot of money on books with details of rolling stock and locomotives, and but you can get a lot just from Google, searching for things online, and talking to people. It's really, especially for what I do, it's essential to get information from experts who know how things work and can point you in the right direction for information.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. And
Super.
it looks like Matt is done.
I finished the scenario. I was, my score was pretty spectacular, but
Right.
we got to the end and we didn't blow it up.
By the way, talking of people who can help you, just a shout out. I don't know if he's on the stream, but a shout out to Phil Moberg, who did a lot of the research of the area around Corin. Finding out where the track was laid, and about where the Montana Trail went, where the town was. So that was a big help too.
Very good.
If people want to get in touch with you, Mike, where can they find you? Like Facebook? I know you have Facebook page.
Mainly on Facebook, but you can also find me at Railworks America on the forum, mrennie.
Okay.
And I recently set up my own website on Wix, so just search for Wix Smokebox, and it should come up. It's not high up in the search results at the moment because it's only new.
And I see you on our Dovetail forums quite often as well, so I'm very happy that whenever there's a question to you, you always come and answer it. I'm very happy about it because I don't have to do it.
Yeah, I'll answer
So thank you for
all reasonable questions and requests.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the
So,
unreasonable
how much
ones I'll
time-
ignore.
See, I thought asking for a big boy was unreasonable, so apparently I'd have
Well, it
no
was
idea what's
until
unreasonable.
recently.
So,
It was until recently, but when a friend of mine said that he could send me all of the diagrams in electronic format, I said, all right,
make it so, number one.
convince me.
So thank you very much, Mike. I think
Thank
we
you.
still have about 3 minutes until the actual event of driving the Golden Spike happens. Am I right?
We have, yes.
Yeah.
We were at one point going to put a countdown on the stream, but You know what? We had trouble with microphones and cameras, so let's just leave it at where it is.
To be fair,
you've driven in at 12:47 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, which is 7:47 here, British Summer Time.
Exactly.
2:47 in Washington DC. It's often reported as 2:47, but that was the time in Washington.
You have 3 minutes to install a countdown. Yeah, and mess the stream up probably.
I should have got a drink ready.
So what are they going to do? What's the event
I'll
going
tell you,
to
I've
look
got
like?
a 15-year Glenfiddich single malt here. Just add a 0.
There you go.
But I mean, in the US themselves, in that place on the Promontory Summit, what exactly are they going to do? Are they going to celebrate? Is there like a long couple of days, or is it showed?
Oh, they're doing various events. All of the heritage lines and museums are doing a lot of them. We've got the locomotives to do it with. They're doing recreations of the ceremony. In Promontory Summit itself, I believe there are several thousand people there and dignitaries. Secretary of State for Transportation will be there, Elaine Chao, and I think the President, Chairman, and CEO of Union Pacific will be there. So it's just I haven't seen whether they're live streaming it on Facebook, which is a shame.
It wouldn't surprise me if Trains Magazine are doing it, because Trains Magazine have been doing an awful lot of live streaming, so I fully suspect they might well be having a look. Find them on Facebook as well, folks. Really good.
I just hope they're having good weather for it.
Yeah, well, one would hope.
I hope so. So there are things going on everywhere. There's a lot going on in Ogden. Somebody just said in Cheyenne as well, which is the home of the big boy in 844. And they'll be going on, I believe, throughout the year even. Of course, today's just the culmination.
Yeah.
7:46.
So, Mike, are you planning to be for the 200th?
I'll cross my fingers.
Yeah, it's happening right now.
I
Thinking about
might have
30
finished the big
seconds.
boy by then.
Fingers crossed.
I hope Train Simulator will still be around.
Of course it will be.
Train Simulator 2070, will it be?
Something like that, yeah.
That's brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. I think it's the perfect time to finish this.
It's 7:47 p.m. So
well, happy anniversary.
Happy 150th anniversary.
Thank you so much, Mike. I mean, we really enjoyed it. I think it's a different stream from what we usually have, and we really got a chance to explore what is the life of a third-party developer is, and also find out a bit more about the route and the trains that you made. So thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, it's been really good. And I guess for everyone that's watching as well, if this is the kind of thing you want to see more of, then let us know. And who would you like to hear from as well? Do just send Dimitri all of your thoughts.
Yeah.
And thank you to both of you for setting this up and giving us a chance to show people what we've done.
That's really good. Yeah. And just, as I said earlier on, thank you for creating that. That is just, that experience, driving that loco on that route is just amazing. So if you folks have not experienced these locos on the marvellous Promontory Summit Route, then go fix that. Because seriously, that is a different kind of experience altogether. It's really good fun. It's not particularly easy, although there is an easier mode, which will make it a lot more the way you might expect it from other Steam locos. So you can kind of dial the experience up and down, so you can come into it, enjoy the visuals, and then you can step it up to a hard mode, and then actually learn how to drive the trains, the locomotives.
And there's a big selection as well. There's not just 119.
Oh yeah, there's a few locos to pick from as well. So go and have a look if you haven't had a look yet. Definitely recommend that stuff. That is really good. So yeah, well done, Mike.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the stream.
Yes, thanks very much, everyone, and we will catch you later on. Yeah, thank you, Mike. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers all. Bye bye.
Thank you.